The iconic Apollo Theater was absolutely electric on this crisp October evening in Harlem. The legendary performance venue was decked out in all its neon-soaked, Art Deco splendor to celebrate 9 decades of showcasing world-class music, dance, and comedy from the upper echelons of Black excellence. Inside the packed auditorium, a genuine air of festive reverence permeated the crowd as they awaited the night's cavalcade of star-studded performances and tributes to the Apollo's lasting cultural legacy. Few institutions commanded such a storied, hallowed history within the African American community. In a private viewing box tucked discreetly stage right, Meghan Markle settled into the plush velvet seating with an air of poorly concealed impatience. As per usual, she had insisted on securing a semi-private perch slightly removed yet elevated from the hoi polloi filling the orchestra seating below. One of her chief advisors, a pushy young PhD student from UCLA named Felicia, was droning on at her side about various cultural talking points and photo-op moments Meghan should look out for. But the Duchess' mind kept drifting as she shifted restlessly in her seat. Truth be told, she had lobbied aggressively for a backstage meet-and-greet and personal dressing room at this event. An opportunity to mingle directly with the titans of modern Black celebrity she so desperately coveted joining the ranks of. But for whatever reason, her requests had been repeatedly stonewalled and rebuffed by the Apollo's board of directors and organizing committee. It was more than a bit humbling to not get the royal treatment she had grown accustomed to commanding simply by brandishing her cult of personality. Felicia droned on in a hushed voice about the careful engagement talking points she had prepared, but Meghan was only half listening. She knew events like these carried inherent risk of awkward confrontations or impolitic gaffes from her fellow attendees. But surely even among New York's most irreverent art scene, they wouldn't dare denigrate her publicly before such an auspicious audience. Shortly after 8 p.m., the house lights dimmed and a swell of anticipatory cheers and applause rolled through the crowd like an electric current. A booming overture of funk and soul blasted from the speakers as the velvet curtains swept apart with a flourish. Ascending through a billowing cloud of spectral dry ice fog came the unmistakable silhouette of R&B superstar Usher Raymond. Meghan felt her pulse quicken at the mere aura of the iconic entertainer's presence as he stepped into the bright stage lights to a rapturous roar. Usher certainly knew how to work a crowd into an absolute fever pitch from the get-go. His blinding charisma and electrifying stage presence commanded every eyeball in the place as he launched into a blistering opening medley of hits spanning his illustrious 3-decade career. As the first few fiery numbers rolled by in a kaleidoscopic rush of laser lights and pounding bass lines, Meghan even caught herself unconsciously swaying and grooving along in her seat like a giddy schoolgirl. She knew she would need to tamp down such blatant fangirling if she hoped to retain an air of sophisticated poise for the paparazzi documenting her every reaction. But still, watching the supremely gifted showman in his full element was downright mesmerizing. After the 3rd or 4th number, Usher paused to catch his breath and addressed the roaring audience. His face glistened with a delightfully ostentatious sheen of perspiration. "What's good, Harlem?" he crooned in a voice that absolutely dripped sexuality. "Thank you all for showing up to celebrate 90 years of the world's eyeless talent factory. We gon' turn this place all the way up one time, you dig?" More raucous cheers and applause rained down from the crowds. Usher tilted his head back with a wide grin of satisfaction plastered across his features. Then his gaze sliced across the audience, almost like he was sizing up the gathered assemblage one by one. Then his eyes seemed to linger for an extra beat on Meghan's private viewing box up in the balcony. Meghan felt her breath hitch in her throat as an unmistakable spark of recognition flashed in Usher's eyes. Those penetrating beams of laser-guided cool bored into her with what felt like prurient speculation. No. There was no way he'd dare. But then the corner of Usher's lip quirked upward in a contemptuous smirk, and Meghan's stomach plummeted in growing dread as he brought the mic back up to his lips. "Actually, while I got the whole world watching tonight," Usher purred in that intoxicating baritone, "I gotta give a big shout-out to a very special lady joining us backstage here tonight." He threw another pointed look directly towards Meghan's private box. The corner of her lips turned down in a slight preemptive frown, already sensing that this shout-out would not be so innocuous or flattering. "Y'all already know I'm talking about that big bad Duchess herself, Mrs. Meghan Markle. Another lascivious eyebrow wag in her direction. The crowd whooped with energized approval. Meghan felt heat bloom across her cheeks. She was suddenly glad that she and Felicia were mostly obscured up in their dim alcove. Usher didn't miss a beat, capitalizing on the hyped reaction with an impish grin before launching into a spectacularly raunchy riff of saccharine condescension. "Oh yeah, make some noise for the one and only Meghan Markle, y'all. Always hustling and grinding her way into a spot where she don't belong, know what I'm sayin'? Living her wildest dreams, always gotta be savage, baby." The crowd roared and howled with unrestrained glee at this characterization. Meghan's flush had now enveloped her entire face and crept down her clavicles. Usher had the audacity to blow her a mocking kiss. "Don't be mad, Meg. You know we're just kidding, and you stay catching strays wherever you go these days." More uproarious peals of laughter. Meghan visibly seethed while fighting to maintain her composure as the leering pop icon reveled in his own grossly disrespectful monologue. "Hey, you know what?" Usher suddenly went on, raising his hands in an exaggeratedly innocent gesture. "I felt kinda bad about that one. Let me make it up to our special guest from overseas." He flashed a toothy grin and nodded towards the wings, where one of his backup dancers promptly wheeled out a solitary stool and placed it center stage. Bathing Meghan's nook with an unmistakable spotlight, Usher turned and extended one hand towards her with an exaggerated flourish. "Meghan Markle, would you please do us all the honor of joining me up on stage?" His voice dripped with a saccharine false reverence that suggested her only real choice was public humiliation or humiliation. Felicia looked over at Meghan with naked apprehension. Her face kept shifting between silent urging for Meghan to stand her ground and muted pleas for her to avoid making an even bigger spectacle of herself. The roars of "Meghan! Meghan! Meghan!" chants reverberated through the arena like a deafening cacophony. Red splotches of unadulterated rage and indignation blossomed on the Duchess' face and chest as the gravity of it sank in. That insufferable lout was calling her out before her desired audience, no, taunting and belittling her attempts to ingratiate herself with the black cultural elite before the entire world. And he was clearly angling to make a public spectacle out of her regardless of her response. Meghan rose abruptly from her seat, shooting daggers at Felicia to stay seated and follow protocol. With what little composure she could muster, the Duchess descended from the private box with clipped, regal strides. All the while, the soulful opening strains of one of Usher's biggest hits began simmering over the speakers.